Hey, what's up YouTube, and welcome back to the Barlo Zone, home of the one and only Demon Hunter King Kaido himself sent to Azeroth. How's everybody doing today? I hope the weather's been as nice for y'all as it's been for me the last couple of days. I've been busting a sweat in the afternoon. Isn't it November? Isn't it time for it to start getting cold? Anyway, moving on. I got a kind of fun one lined up for us today. I've alluded to this topic before, Barlo theory crafting, but I realized, as I was rewatching that other video, I didn't really go into a lot of detail about how a Barlo theory comes together. So I wanted to take this chance because I had an interesting idea last night that it dawned on me stands as the perfect opportunity to give you guys a bit of an insight into how Barlo comes up with his theories, and I guess define how I draw the line between fan fiction and theory. Because I'll be honest, I'm not immune to fan fiction, just like every other fan. We have these wild thoughts and we just really like them, right? Regardless if they hold up to whatever scrutiny needs to be done to make something a theory. There is a difference between fan fiction and theory. So I wanted to kind of go over this idea. I had an idea, a what if you will, right? And when I caught that I was saying what if, that was like a trigger to me. In my brain, I'm like, okay, you know what? This is fan fiction. I'm going off something random, nothing off the top connects it to anything canonical. It's just a fun idea to have, right? Like that's a lot of what ifs are. Just like, hey, what if things played out like this? And then I had the thought, as I started thinking about this what if more, I had that thought, the question occurred to me, where is the line between fan fiction and theory crafting, right? And that's when I realized this idea stands as the perfect opportunity to give you guys some insight into how Barlo theory crafting goes about. So what was the idea? Oh wait, no, my bad. One more thing, to define what my beliefs are on where the line is between fan fiction and theory crafting. That would be the idea tracks with canonicity of the story. Regardless of how ridiculous or wild the idea sounds, as long as it tracks with what has been established by the creator, we're looking at a theory. You might call it fan fiction, and go ahead, because you know what, you're trying to be real with yourself or whatever. You're all, hey, this is a cool idea, it kind of tracks, but I don't really think it is. It's just something I think would be cool to see. So call it fan fiction. Like, hey, all power to you. I might still stop in like, hey, you know what, this actually surprisingly tracks with canon, and try to start a conversation about that, because theory crafting is my brand, is my niche, right? I don't just want to consider what I'm being told. I want to consider what the implications of what I'm being told are. So, what was the idea? Doing all this suspense stuff, even though I know I already presented the idea with my thumbnail. The idea being Marshall D. bait and switch. Like, what if Teach has actually been, I don't want to say a good guy. I'll get into all of this because, as I said, we're going to see how a Barlo theory comes into being. But let's just keep this in the back of our minds, right? As we go through the steps of turning a fan fiction idea, what's up, Alice? Turning this idea into a theory. Now, as I said, in my eyes, for something to be a theory, regardless of if you still decide to call it a fan fiction, for something to be a theory, it has to track with the canon of the story, right? Like, it has to stand up to the question of, sorry about that, y'all. Alice getting all excited. But it has to stand up to the canon, the facts that the creator has presented, right? So the first question, once I decide that I want to test an idea for if it is a theory is, how does this stand up to the canon? And when we are talking about Teach, especially talking about Teach, considering him outside of how a lot of fans see him as a bad guy, the first question I felt really needed to be asked is, what justifies his bad guy label, right? Like, what justifies people calling him a bad guy at this point of the story? And I want to say unfortunately, but I'm going to try not to lean one way or the other as I'm going through this, right? But what it came down to when considering, how is Teach a bad guy? Why is Teach a bad guy? Is Marineford. Like, that's really all. That's all we have to legitimately argue that Teach is a bad guy, right? And for the sake of trying to be as unbiased as I can as this is evolving, right? Some very bad things went down at Marineford, and Teach was the linchpin to these things going down. If he never bodied Ace and brought him in to the world government, then, Marineford never happens. So let's go ahead and take a look at these two events, right? Because these are both fan favorite characters. And as I've mentioned in a few videos recently, even I have been becoming more attached to Newgate through this God Valley flashback, right? Like the family thing, it was always part of who Newgate was. And then a lot of people really loved Ace as well, right? And both of these characters met the Reaper at Marineford. Now, I think I'm going to start with Whitebeard, even though I have Ace here first. I want to start with Whitebeard. Can't really tell you why, but I do admit, I do see, the argument for him being a bad guy. Teach was the one that commanded the firing squad that ultimately sent Whitebeard to hang out with his old captain, right? But let's consider Whitebeard for a moment in this situation, right? Because it's just an angle I don't see many people actually dive into and consider when trying to argue that Teach is a bad guy because of this moment. Whitebeard was already on death's door. Like, dude had been sick for a while. The IVs, all that. Like, yeah, sure, he was still him, right? Like, he was still the strongest man alive. But Whitebeard was already approaching death's door before Marineford happened. So we have to ask ourselves, do we really believe Whitebeard would have made it another 2 years, plus however long it takes Luffy to actually get to Laugh-Tale? Do we really believe Whitebeard would have survived that long and still been strong? Because, it kind of becoming a little clearer, although it's still, soft theory, that Teach is carrying the will of his father, Rox D. Xebec, Davy D. Xebec, the man who carried the will of Davy, right? And at some point, because with his mom making it off the island with him, as I said, she would have talked to him at least a bit about his dad, what his dad's plan was, why his dad met his end, stuff like that. Like, she would have indulged Teach with some of this information before he went out on his own at the age of 12. As I pointed out, it's likely sometime in the next decade of the story after God Valley, Eris will also return home to her husband, right? You know what? I'm making a big assumption that Xebec is dead right now. And I do need to point that out. I see that I am assuming Xebec's dead. Now, the reason I bring up Xebec and the will of Xebec is he knew he needed Whitebeard on the crew, right? He was one of the pirates that Xebec went out of his way to go Davy back, hunt down, and get this man on his crew. Now, we don't have confirmation one way or the other if Newgate already had the power of the Gura Gura no Mi before Zebek, ran into him or decided to recruit him. I would just like to point out, a lot of characters on Zebek's crew have devil fruits. We have not seen any of them eat those devil fruits. We have not gotten any indication that they were ever hunting down these devil fruits specifically to feed the crew. Now, you know what? I suppose it could be argued Zebek was looking for 2 specific devil fruits. But if you're looking for 2 specific devil fruits, why then go out of your way to waste time hunting down other devil fruits for your crew, who are already insanely powerful monsters? I think, for me at least, it's reasonable to believe that the crew members Zebek had that had devil fruits were in possession of them when Zebek recruited them. So Zebek needed the power of the Gura Gura no Mi on his side, and at some point in Teach's life, Teach also realized, I need the power of the Gura Gura on my side. But at this point where he has become a captain in his own right, struck out on his own, is chasing his own dream, he's already murdered Thatch. There's no way in hell, and he knows it, there's no way that Newgate is going to forgive him and align with Teach at that point. So as the events of Marineford are unfolding, right, like you can see Newgate taking this damage. Like, I don't know, I'll hunt down the screenshot. The Oda and the narrator did actually lay out the account for the amount of damage that Newgate took, and dude, it was a Himothy Chadson and a half's worth of damage. Like, and then this man had the gall to also not fall over when he died. My dude, Himothy Chadson. There's so many of those characters in this story. So instead of letting Whitebeard leave Marineford, and you know what, to be honest, even if Teach didn't kill Whitebeard, once Ace went down, it was a pretty solid chance that Whitebeard no longer made it out of this situation. In fact, I believe it was either as he was discussing the possibility of rolling up, or as he was rolling up, he admitted that he knew this, he was probably not leaving this situation. Like, dude came here to throw away his life to save his son. So if Teach would have just allowed nature to take its course, right, then that would have added a whole extra mess of side quests for him to do, trying to hunt down the Gura Gura no Mi again after the random reset when Teach dies. And because we're on Marineford, it's a solid chance it respawns at a fruit at Marineford, in which case, with all that Teach has done, he's already kind of forfeited his title as a warlord that he just got. It's not likely he's going to be able to get it out of Marineford. So instead of hunting down a random reset, he took the opportunity that was presented to him by fate. I'm not saying Teach is a good guy for finishing off Whitebeard and taking his power. I'm just saying that Teach knew he needed this power, and when he saw an opportunity arise, he maximized on that. Now keep that in mind, because I'll be honest, this one might be kind of long. I might split it up, so we might have to keep this in mind for an extra couple days. This is going to come up again at the end of the video. Now, aside from Whitebeard, right, as I mentioned, Ace also died at Marineford, and this is the one I take the most issue with personally. As I said, Teach was the linchpin, right? If he never captured Ace and turned him in, Marineford never happens. But how far back is justifiable to pin the blame on somebody just to hate them specifically, instead of somebody who is more obviously the reason that Ace died? And no, I'm not talking about Sakazuki. Yes, Sakazuki landed that hit, right? But remember, Ace tanked that punch. That punch wasn't meant for Ace. That punch was meant for Luffy. Ace made the decision to lay down his life to save his brother. Okay. But even before we get to Teach, there are multiple layers of failure on behalf of Ace to finally be able to pin the blame for Ace's death on Teach. Yes, Teach is the reason Ace is there. That cannot be argued. I understand that. What can be argued is Whitebeard failed him. This is one of the strongest men on the planet, right? And I understand I'm going to get some hate for saying that. But let's look at it unobjectively. Whitebeard failed Ace. Dude did not get involved until shit was already hitting the fan on every front on that battlefield. If the Moby Dick pulls up and Whitebeard gets involved immediately, Ace makes it off the island. Whitebeard perhaps even makes it off the island. But okay, let's just say, for argument's sake, Whitebeard was trying to use this battle to inspire Luffy, who also was there, showing up about the same time the Moby Dick was, right? Let's say Whitebeard was using this to try to motivate Luffy, inspire Luffy, test Luffy, see what this captain was actually made of. That kind of justifies him wanting to sit on the sidelines and see how events play out before getting involved himself, right? Okay, so we have an argument for Whitebeard's actions at Marineford. We can go ahead and take a little bit of that blame off of his head at this point, right? Garp is also there. The hero of the Marines, one of the strongest men on the planet. He ain't got the title of strongest man alive, but genuinely, because of his power level and his sustained power level, right? Like, dude is at least as old as Whitebeard. He ain't hooked up to no IVs. He's taken a lot of battle damage. Like, Garp is more in his prime at Marineford than Whitebeard is. So, do we pin the blame on Garp? That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. At the end of the day, Garp was in the strongest position to save his grandson. And he chose not to. He chose the Marines he wanted to protect over somebody who saw him as family. Somebody he saw as family, a brother to his grandson. And this man chose to protect the Marines over family. I can't justify that. I can't. There is no logic to justify Garp deciding to continue to side with the Marines. Now, once again, Luffy can be slotted in here as a potential argument. I still don't think it's a good one. Garp may have wanted to see what his grandson had managed to do since striking out on his own. That being said, dude, Luffy's journey is only like 6 months old at this point. Like, Luffy hasn't done enough to justify wanting to put faith in him to save somebody you know for a fact you can save. Who at Marineford is stopping Garp? If Garp just puts Ace under his arm and makes a beeline for the Moby Dick, who is stopping him? Sakazuki? Not a fucking chance. Kuzan? Pfft. Bro, we saw on Hachinosu. This is 2 years later. Garp is 2 years, past his prime at this point. He's still able to hockey his way out of being frozen by Kuzan. Kuzan wasn't stopping him. And I don't know, maybe Kizaru could have. Dude travels at the speed of light. I haven't seen anything to justify arguing that Garp could fight at the speed of light, but Garp's got that Conqueror's Haki, and Kizaru does not seem to have the type of will to stand up to a strong burst of Conqueror's Haki from somebody who's fighting him. I'm just saying, man, at the end of the day, Garp was in the best position to save Ace. Regardless of why Ace was there, Garp was in the strongest position to save Ace and made the decision to stick to his guns. Who's going to protect the Marines if I leave? bro chose job over family. I don't know, maybe it's justified in a different culture. Anyway, we are getting to about the halfway point. I think I'm going to present this last part about the actual story, as far as concerning what justifies Teach as a bad guy. I'm going to do a quick outro, and then I'm going to go into recording the rest of it for a part 2. But what is the second part that I was able to identify as justifying Blackbeard as a bad guy? And that's going to be Amazon Lily. Sure, maybe he had a reason to attack Amazon Lily. I do have pointed out here, it seems bad, but the Kuja were very heavily featured as side characters in this God Valley flashback God Valley Zebek Herald flashback. The Kuja have been surprisingly heavily featured in this, kind of indicating they have a part to play in this final war. Zebek may have figured that out, which means Teach might know it. Does it justify him attacking and trying to kill Boa Hancock? I don't think so. I also don't personally believe that he was trying to kill Boa during this fight. And the second part I got here is we got to keep in mind Teach was not the one that destroyed Amazon Lily. It was the Seraphim, or in other words, the world government. So by Teach attacking Amazon Lily, what he has actually done is given them a common enemy with all of the pirates, himself included. Because the world government came here supposedly under the pretense of just capturing Boa and Blackbeard because the Shichibukai program had been dissolved. What the world government actually did was destroy the Kuja's island. The world government destroyed Amazon Lily. Now, this has been a pretty fun first part for me to dive into. As always, friends, I would love to know what you guys think about this. Feel free to hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you're thinking. If a YouTube comment isn't enough, as always, don't forget you can hit me up on my socials, X and Tumblr at Barlo Be Theorizing, or feel free to join my Discord community where we can have conversations about all this before I turn them into videos. However you guys decide, if you're liking the content, don't forget to hit that like and or subscribe button. Let your boy Barlo know that you're enjoying what he's pitching. As always, though, fam, I look forward to seeing you in the next one for part 2 and the conclusion to this theory. Much love.